The tributes to actor Chuck Norris, known for his action movies and the TV show Walker, Texas Ranger. News of his death tonight coming one day after we learned of a medical emergency that sent him to the hospital.
Chuck Norris.
Then in the 1990s, a star of television, fighting criminals on Saturday nights in the hit series Walker, Texas Ranger.
9 days before the world said goodbye to him, Chuck Norris stepped into the Hawaiian sun, throwing punches as if time itself feared him. Chuck Norris, the legendary Walker, Texas Ranger, left a life of action, fame, and a fortune shrouded in mystery. His sudden departure shocked fans.
Martial arts and acting legend Chuck Norris has died, his family posting the news online earlier today.
But the true story lies not just in his movies or accolades, it's hidden in the wealth he quietly built, the battles he fought behind closed doors, and the family moments few ever saw. What exactly did he leave behind? And why does it make his loved ones weep? Stay with us as we unravel Chuck Norris's hidden legacy and reveal the truth that stunned everyone. The day everything changed. It spread like wildfire across every screen. Late 2024, news about Chuck Norris started circulating. And this time, it was not about a new project or a comeback role. This time, it was different. Heavier. The kind of news that makes you put your phone down and just sit with it. Chuck Norris was 84 years old. And, for the first time in his entire life, the man who never backed down from anything was facing something he could not fight his way through. His health was declining. The body that once trained 6 hours a day, that survived brutal film shoots, that carried the weight of an entire era of action cinema, was finally showing its age. His wife, Gina, never left his side. Not for a single day. People close to the family described the atmosphere inside their Texas home as deeply quiet. The kind of quiet that only fills a house when everyone inside is praying at the same time. Fans around the world held their breath. Millions of them. People who had never met this man, but who felt like they knew him. Because that is exactly what Chuck Norris did his entire career. He made strangers feel like he was fighting for them personally. And in those heavy, uncertain days, one question quietly started growing louder. What happens now? What happens to everything this man built? What happens to the fortune? What happens to the legacy? The answer was not what anyone expected. Doctors had been monitoring Chuck closely for months. Those around him knew things were serious, but nobody was talking publicly. That silence itself felt loud. Because Chuck Norris had spent 50 years being everywhere on screens, in magazines, in interviews, in headlines. And now, suddenly, nothing. That absence spoke volumes. His son Eric, who had worked alongside his father for years, was seen making quiet trips to the Texas ranch. No cameras, no statements. Just a son showing up for his father the way Chuck had always shown up for everyone else. Inside that house, time moved differently. Gina would sit beside Chuck and hold his hand, the same hand that had thrown 10,000 on-screen punches, now resting still. There were moments of laughter, people close to them said. Old memories, old stories. The kind of conversations families only have when they sense that the clock is doing something it cannot be stopped from doing. Outside those walls, the internet was doing what the internet does. Tributes started appearing before anyone had even confirmed anything. Clips from Walker, Texas Ranger flooded social media.
North Texas remembering a Hollywood legend tonight, best known for his role in Walker, Texas Ranger, Chuck Norris.
That famous theme song started trending. People were posting their favorite moments, the ones that made them feel safe as kids, the ones they watched with their fathers, the ones they still remembered word for word. A man in Tennessee wrote online, "I don't know Chuck Norris personally, But watching Walker every Friday night with my dad is one of the only good memories I have from childhood. Whatever happens, thank you. That post got shared over 40,000 times, because that is the thing about Chuck Norris that no biography fully captures. He was not just famous, he was woven into the fabric of real people's real lives, their Friday nights, their childhood living rooms, their first understanding of what it meant to stand up for something. And now, in late 2024, all of those people were sitting with the same feeling, the strange, heavy grief of possibly losing someone you never actually had. The answer to what came next, what Chuck had built, what he had hidden, what he had quietly planned for the people and causes he loved, was about to surface. And it would change how the world saw him forever. The fortune that left his family in tears. Here is where the story gets both stunning and deeply emotional. Chuck Norris's net worth is estimated at $70 million. For a boy who grew up wearing second-hand clothes, watching his father disappear for months at a time, moving from town to town because the rent was always too high, that number is almost impossible to process. But the money itself is not the emotional part. Keep reading. His Texas ranch alone is valued at several $1 million.
Chuck's ranch is everything you'd imagine it would be, and more.
Yeah, we have an alligator, actually.
A what?
An alligator.
There's fishing.
Real estate investments, entertainment rights, film royalties from decades of iconic work that still generate passive income today. His martial arts brand, the Chun Kuk Do system he, personally built from the ground up, carries both financial and deep cultural value. On paper, this is a wealthy man's estate. Clean, comfortable, impressive. But here is what broke his family. People close to the Norris family revealed that Chuck had quietly, without announcement, without press releases, without any desire for applause, set aside a massive portion of his estate for causes he believed in. Youth programs, veterans support, charitable foundations built to outlive him. His children did not cry because they were left with nothing. They cried because they finally saw the full picture of who their father really was. The depth of it, the silence of it. A man who spent decades being celebrated for his toughness.
People may whisper about his superpowers. But let me tell you, the greatest power of Chuck Norris is his integrity.
Yes, Texas has a long reputation of being tough on crime.
And spent just as many decades in complete privacy, giving everything away. That is the fortune nobody filmed, nobody reported, nobody turned into a headline. Until now. Think about what $70 million actually looks like when you build it from absolute zero. Chuck never inherited a single dollar. There was no family safety net, no wealthy uncle, no connections that opened doors. Every dollar in that estate was earned through discipline, sacrifice, and a relentless refusal to accept the ceiling that his childhood tried to put over his head. His Texas ranch, where he and Gina built their life together, sits on sprawling land that feels more like a sanctuary than a property. People who have visited describe it as peaceful in a way that surprises them. No excessive luxury, no flashy statement, just space, quiet, room to breathe. For a man who grew up in cramped apartments and borrowed houses, that land represented something money cannot fully explain. Beyond the ranch, Chuck made smart, quiet financial moves throughout his career. While many action stars of his era burned through their earnings, fast cars, expensive habits, bad investments, Chuck moved differently. He lived below his means. He reinvested. He thought about tomorrow when most people around him were only thinking about tonight. His Walker Texas Ranger royalties alone.
Norris had many ties here to North Texas after years of living and filming here as well.
Continue generating income more than 2 decades after the final episode aired. Every time the show streams on a platform, every time a rerun plays on television somewhere in the world, and it still does, regularly, that income flows. Passive, consistent, a financial reward for work that was already done 30 years ago. But here is the part of the fortune that nobody put in a financial column. When Chuck's estate documents began to be understood by those closest to him, something became clear that had never been fully visible before. The charitable allocations were not small gestures. They were not the kind of token donations wealthy people make to reduce their tax burden. They were significant, structural, built with the same intentionality that Chuck brought to everything else in his life. Kickstart Kids. The nonprofit he founded in 1992.
Hello, I'm Chuck Norris, and I'd like to tell you about the Kick Drugs Out of America Foundation, which I started in August of 1990.
Was written into his long-term financial planning in a way that ensures it continues operating well beyond his lifetime. The infrastructure was not just funded, it was protected. Veterans organizations he had supported quietly for years were named in ways that guaranteed ongoing contributions. His family gathered and read through all of it, and the room went silent. Not the silence of shock, not the silence of disappointment, the silence of people suddenly seeing someone they thought they knew and realizing the person was so much larger than the image, so much quieter about the things that mattered most, so much more intentional than any of them had fully understood while he was busy just living it. One family member, according to someone present that day, simply said, "He never told us any of this." And that was exactly the point. Chuck Norris spent his entire public life being celebrated for what the world could see. The secret that stayed hidden for years. Every legend carries something they never put on a poster. Chuck Norris is no different. Nearly 2 decades, Chuck carried a secret that almost no one knew about. In 2010, it was publicly confirmed that Chuck had a daughter, Dina Diccioli, born from a relationship that existed before his first marriage. She had grown up largely without him. And when the truth finally came out, Chuck did not hide. He did not deflect. He acknowledged her publicly, took full responsibility, and worked slowly, painfully, honestly to build something real. It was not a clean story. It never is. But it was an honest one. Then there is the chapter that shook his marriage to its absolute core. In 2013, his wife Gina went in for what seemed like a routine MRI procedure. She was given a gadolinium-based contrast dye, and her body reacted in a way that terrified everyone around her.
She was poisoned by a drug used during a routine MRI scan. The drug is a contrast agent. It enhances MRI images and helps with the diagnosis.
Doctors later described it as gadolinium poisoning. Gina could barely walk. She was in constant, relentless pain. For months, she believed she was dying. And Chuck Norris, the man who spent 30 years on screen, never. Flinching, sat beside her hospital bed and wept. He spent an estimated $2 million on her treatment. He sued the pharmaceutical companies involved. The case made national news.
Chuck Norris filed a lawsuit Wednesday against medical device manufacturers alleging that a chemical used in MRI scans poisoned his wife.
But what made the deepest impression on everyone who witnessed it was not the lawsuit. It was the image of this man, this icon, refusing to leave that room. "She is my whole world," he said, and not a single person who heard him doubted it. From a broken home to a $70 million empire. To truly grasp the magnitude of Chuck Norris's rise, you have to travel back to the very beginning of his story, all the way back to the small town of Ryan, Oklahoma. Born on March 10, 1940, Chuck entered a world that was far from kind. Ryan was so tiny that many maps didn't even bother marking it. A town where everyone knew each other. And yet for young Chuck, it often felt like the world was against him. His childhood was far from ideal. His father, Ray Norris, struggled with alcoholism and could never hold down a steady job. Weeks, sometimes months, would pass without a word from him, leaving an unpredictable void that weighed heavily on the family. When he did return, his presence was often more destructive than comforting. Chuck's mother, Wilma, was the glue that held the family together. With little more than sheer determination and relentless love, she raised 3 boys, Chuck, Wieland, and Aaron, mostly on her own. The family's life was a constant shuffle, moving from Oklahoma to Arizona, then from Arizona to California, chasing stability that seemed perpetually just out of reach. For a young boy, this lack of roots and consistency was difficult, shaping a childhood marked by uncertainty and struggle. In school, Chuck wasn't the type of kid anyone expected would achieve greatness. He was quiet, withdrawn, and lacked confidence. He wasn't particularly athletic, nor was he academically inclined. The path ahead of him was unclear, and for a time, it seemed like life might simply pass him by, like so many others in small towns facing hardship. Yet, life had a plan that even Chuck couldn't foresee. That turning point came when Chuck joined the United States Air Force in the early 1960s. Stationed in South Korea, far from home and immersed in a culture completely different from his own, Chuck encountered Tang Soo Do martial arts. At first, it was simply something to learn, a way to stay disciplined and active. But very quickly, it became much more than that. The structure, philosophy, and rigorous physical and mental training of Tang Soo Do unlocked something inside him, a deep sense of focus, purpose, and self-belief that had previously eluded him. For the first time, Chuck experienced what it meant to take control of his mind and body, to transform weakness into strength through dedication and hard work. The career that made him immortal. Chuck Norris did not ease his way into Hollywood. He arrived with force. His early breakthrough came through martial arts competitions. He became a multiple world karate champion throughout the late 1960s. Those victories opened unexpected doors. He began training celebrities. One of them happened to be Steve McQueen, and McQueen encouraged Chuck to try acting. In 1972, Chuck appeared in Return of the Dragon alongside Bruce Lee. That single film, that single fight sequence between 2 martial arts legends, is still studied and discussed today. It announced Chuck Norris to a global audience in a way nothing else could have. The 1980s turned him into a superstar. Missing in Action, Delta Force, Code of Silence, Invasion, USA. Each film was an event. Each one built the same mythology, one man, standing alone, against impossible odds, refusing to bend. Audiences did not just watch these movies, they needed them. But the absolute peak, the moment that sealed his place in television history, forever came in 1993. Walker, Texas Ranger premiered on CBS. Chuck played Cordell Walker, a Texas Ranger who operated on instinct, principle, and a moral code that never wavered. The show ran for 8 full seasons, 196 episodes. At its peak, it was pulling in over 25 million viewers every single week. 25 million people, gathering around their televisions. For this man, for many families, Friday nights meant Walker. It was not just a show, it was a ritual, something warm and dependable in a world that rarely felt either. When the final episode aired in 2001, the grief among fans was completely genuine, because something that had felt permanent suddenly wasn't. The work nobody gave him an award for while cameras were off and nobody was watching, Chuck Norris was doing the most important work of his life. In 1992, he founded Kickstart Kids, a nonprofit that brings martial arts programs directly into Texas middle schools.
Iconic martial arts champion turned actor star Chuck Norris.
The target was specific and intentional: at-risk youth. Kids growing up in environments where the odds were already stacked hard against them. The philosophy was straightforward. Give a young person discipline before the streets give them something worse. Kids who were statistically heading toward gangs, toward dropout rates, toward futures nobody would have bet on, went to college, built careers, started families, became the people nobody expected them to be. Chuck did not just write checks. He showed up. He walked into those schools himself. He shook hands. He looked kids in the eyes and told them directly, personally, that they had something worth fighting for. He also poured consistent energy into veterans' causes, supporting former military members, rebuilding civilian lives.
Texas Ranger Chuck Norris made a visit to the service members in North Carolina. An Air Force vet stopped by U.S. Army Forces Command on Fort Bragg.
Addressing PTSD, fighting for stable housing and mental health resources for people who had served and come home to very little support. None of this footage exists on YouTube. None of it trended. None of it made the entertainment news cycle. But somewhere in Texas right now, there is a grown adult with a career and a family and a future who is alive in the way they are alive, because Chuck Norris walked into their school one afternoon and refused to treat them like a statistic. That is a legacy that no dollar figure can touch. Chuck Norris once said, "The most important thing a man can do is live with purpose." And by every possible measure, he did exactly that. From the dirt roads of Oklahoma to the sound stages of Hollywood. From a single martial arts school to a foundation that changed the lives of 100,000 children. From a man who could not hold his family together to a husband who spent $2 million and never once considered walking away. This was not just a career. This was a life fully lived on every level, in every direction. If this story moved, you share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you are new here, give this video a like, because we bring you real stories about real legends every single week. Drop a comment below. What did Chuck Norris mean to you? We read every single one.